Dear students, let's continue our online lessons. Today we will talk about critical period hypothesis in second language acquisition. So, what is critical period? Let's at first read the definition, and after that we will discuss it. So, it is a maturational time period during which some crucial experience will have its peak effect on development or learning. So as you see, in a critical period you will start criticize yourself, criticize your knowledge. It means that you achieved this level, to criticize your second language, and also resulting in normal behavior attuned to the particular environment to which the organism has been exposed. So as you say, after acquiring a second language fully, so maybe not fully, for 85%, you can criticize your knowledge, and it's called like critical period. So critical period hypothesis, it's a biologically determined period of life when language can be acquired more easily and beyond which time language is increasingly difficult to acquire. So it means that after acquiring a second language, it will be much more easy to acquire a third, fourth languages, and it will not take you much time, it will not take you much effort, so that after acquiring a second language it will be much more easier. So historical background, let us see the historical point of views. So the critical period hypothesis was first proposed by Wilder Penfield and Raymond Roberts. So they popularized it by Eric Lanneberg in 1967 with his famous book Biological Foundations of Language. So as you see, even in biology, the researchers was concerned about language acquisition. And then first language, by the words of Eric Lanneberg, first language acquisition relies on brain plasticity and can no longer be accomplished once hemispheric development is complete. So if language acquisition doesn't occur by puberty, some aspects of language can be learned only partially, but they cannot be fully achieved. So your brain lateralization is puberty, is the mechanism which closes down the brain's ability to acquire language. So if you will say to your brain, later I will learn the language, later I will do it, it can cause to lateralization, and after that you cannot, as time passes, you cannot acquire a new language. So that be aware of and never lose your time. So what is brain plasticity? It refers to changes in neural pathways, and which are due to changes in our behavior, in our environment, and our neurological processes, as well as changes resulting from bodily injury. So as you see, it is the medical definition. So I think that you don't need the information, so that we will continue with brain lateralization. So what is brain lateralization? It is a longitudinal fissure separates the human brain into two distinct cerebral hemispheres. So in our previous lesson we spoke about it, and they connected by the corpus callosum. So the hemispheres exhibit strong but not complete, so bilateral symmetry in both structure and function. So as you see, it's about brain lateralization, and as the Langeberg hypothesized it in his book Biological Foundations of Language. So he says that language acquisition is a biologically constrained learning. So as you see, it's a biological learning a second language is a biological process by the words of Langebern, and normally it's acquired during a critical period, early life and puberty. So as you see, in order to acquire a new language, it will be much more easier when you are young. So as I mentioned, when you are 10 and 15 years old, you can easily acquire a new language, because at that time you don't have any problems, you don't have to work, and you don't have to think about your family. So that it is the best time to acquire a new language. So outside this period, language acquired through a different learning process or with difficulty. So as you see, as you get older, the language acquiring process also will have difficulties. Then his research was based on 3 groups of people. So the people who had accidents and who are diseases, and children with Down syndrome, wild children. The children with Down syndrome called, as you see, wild children. Unfortunately, in majority of countries, we have lots of people with the syndrome of Down, and fortunately in our country I have never come across with this kind of people. So let's turn to Johnson and Newport. So they performed a study on Chinese and Korean immigrants. So in this way, let me tell about my Chinese neighbor. So when I studied in Russia, I used to have a Chinese neighbor, and you know that learning a language, especially Russian language and English, for Chinese people, it is so difficult, and you know that they have a really huge problems in acquiring languages. She all the time cried, "Oh my God, why I cannot acquire the language? Why I am a stupid person." No, unfortunately, it is not your fault. It is because of the Chinese language, I guess. Because as you know, it is very difficult language, and after Chinese, maybe it's much more difficult to acquire in other languages. So the subjects' ages varied upon arrival in the US, and the immigrants had to be targeting English as their second language. So as you see, when they go to US, they have to learn English as their second language. So the results of testing show a clear and strong relationship between age of acquisition and performance of the test of English grammar. So as you see, age is a valuable part of acquiring language in all spheres. So as you see, here you can see the test scores. So among 270 people, the native speakers, starting from newborn child to 3 and 7 ages, they can acquire the grammar fully, but between the ages 3 to 7 and 8 to 10, as you see, the line is decreasing. So the people who want to learn a grammatical structure of the language at the age of starting from 8 and ending with 15, the number of volunteers, let's say that, are decreasing, and till the age of 39, we don't have people who have a desire to acquire a new language. So that you should try to learn a language as soon as possible. As young you are. So beginning from 4 to 6 years, there is a gradual decline in language proficiency until it depicts for adult learners. And also learners exposed to the language in adulthood show lower performance than those who are exposed in early childhood. So as you see, the people who started from their childhood learning languages, and I don't mean that the grammatical structure or academic words, writing, reading, no, I don't mean that. I mean the colors, numbers, as I said, as early you start the language, it will be more easy to acquire a language when you are adult, when you are teenager. So that start learning the language from today. Critical period affects phonology, morphology, syntax, and not the vocabulary and semantic processing. We will now see why it's the influenced phonology, morphology, and syntax, why it cannot be influential to vocabulary and semantic processing. Let me read the words by Bailey, Stuck, and Hakuta. So there is a much more than simple transfer from language 1 to language 2 going on, and that indeed there is some sort of reenactment of the first language acquisition process at work. So as you see, if your working place, if your surrounding people are first language speakers, you cannot never learn the second language, and you cannot be a fluent speaker. So that try to surround yourself with people who speak target language. So for example, English, and you may practice with them. While learning your first language, if you will use your first language for all times, you cannot learn a second language. So you should replace your music, your native songs with the English ones. You should watch the videos, you should watch films in target language. So that be aware of this. Supportive ideas, supportive studies, let's see them. So Genia was a 13-year-old victim of lifelong child abuse. So she had been kept strapped to a puppy chair and wearing diapers. She appeared to be entirely without language when she was found at her age of 13. Her father had judged her retarded at birth and had chosen to isolate her, and so she had remained until her discovery. So as you see, 13-year-old girl couldn't speak, and after that the researchers found her. We will see what happened. And also here the Isabel, she's a girl who was incarcerated with her deaf-mute mother until the age of 6.5. So she also had no language skill, but unlike Genia, she quickly acquired normal language abilities through systematic specialist training. So it means that as young you are, you can acquire a language easily. I'm repeating it all the time, so that as you see, the Genia was 13 years old and she had difficulties to learn language. But the Isabel is a girl who acquired the language easily, quickly, in comparison to Jenny. So as you see, it is the real life example for you. So that I think that it is the end of our today's lesson, and next time we will continue with the topic of bilingualism. And thank you for being with me. Goodbye.